Hello everybody, so I am back with another chapter for Perfect Son. I hope you guys have had a really great week this week, and to those that celebrate Thanksgiving, happy early Thanksgiving, and to those who don't, happy break. I hope you guys enjoy. Perfect Son by That One Guy with That One Ship. Read by Munchin on Mochiko. Chapter 17. Scribble. Son was hunched over his new desk, the sound of his pen scratching against paper the only disturbance in the otherwise silent room. Lusamine had given him a test to see if he was as intelligent as Lily made him out to be. The schematics for Faba's RKS system were sprawled in front of him, and Son had covered them in sketches, colored lines connecting short notes, crossing out Faba's ideas and replacing them with his own. She hadn't expected him to improve on it all, simply leaving him with them and hoping he could grasp the concept presented. The idea of a multi-typed Pokemon which could protect endangered species by itself. Of course, that was the official story. The story he wasn't told was a line of defense against the Ultra Beasts in an event of an invasion. That was the unofficial story. The truth that was type full was meant to exist to subdue the Ultra Beasts for her personal capture. Son's redesigns focused on the comfort of the Pokemon wearing the system. It was now an external instead of internal. He hated the idea of placing a system inside a Pokemon. Type Null's existence, hidden from him, not referenced anywhere on the schematics. His designs were very specific. Titanium alloys would make a strong enough armor plate to withstand the power of the individual type memories proposed on the original designs. Son had approved those too. He updated the whole system to the point where it was nearly unrecognizable. It was an outer shell connected via cables that would attach to a Pokemon's limbs and infuse it with type energies. The Pokemon would retain a full mobility and had a tactical display that could inform the Pokemon when to switch type drives. Son saw battling as a game. He'd noticed some types did better against others and had recorded these matchups in a table in his head that somehow survived the purge of his thoughts. He wrote it down in a chart for some free space, hoping others would be able to understand it. He knew he thought things differently. He saw Pokemon with stats and hit points, and he knew how to play the game he had invented in his head to perfection. His notes covered every free inch of paper. He had crossed out all of Faba's old nonsense by now. Anything that could cause the creature's pain was stripped out, replaced by interfaces that were humane and subtle rather than large restraints Faba had proposed. He wasn't aware at the time until he looked up out the window, chewing on his pen thoughtfully. He saw the moon hanging high above. It was the first noise he's made since setting down to look at the plans. He was satisfied with the changes, but worried about the Pokemon that would be selected to engage with the new RKS system. It would need to be quadrupled, in keeping with the original designs. The amount of power was still hugely dangerous to the wearer. Son considered showing his mother the new schematics immediately, but decided to let her rest. He lay his pen flat on the back of a desk and span around his chair until he was dizzy. He reviewed the plans again, inspecting them closely. He retired to bed for the night, thinking about the good he'd done while protecting Pokemon with the RKS system's eventual host. He woke a little earlier than usual, getting dressed and fitting his collar snugly into place, smiling as he did so. He gathered the schematics and made his way downstairs, laying everything out on the coffee table. Lusamine was the first to emerge from her quarters and sat down beside him, putting her arm around his waist as she pored over the sketches he'd made. Within seconds, she realized exactly the level of trainer on her hands. Son, this is... She wanted to tell him that this was only a copy of the schematics, but something about the level of detail in his scribbling cut her off. "What do you think, Mother?" Sun asked, the want for acceptance coming through in his voice a little as a tremble. Sun, this is all very advanced. What is this? She pointed at his type matchup chart, and Sun shrugged a little awkwardly. I noticed some Pokemon types are stronger against others, and some are weaker. I learned it while I was on my journey, he said. Lusamine didn't realize what he'd said until a few seconds later. She inhaled sharply and snapped to face him, but he didn't even seem to notice what he'd said himself. He was remembering things slowly. Or was it just an automated response? She wouldn't panic. She was still confident in the conversion being irreversible. She decided not to bring it up. So, what you're saying is, these types, she traced a finger on the diagram, are stronger against these? Yes, Mother. I think I can prove it, too. I called it super effective, Sun informed her. Lusamine knew some types were stronger against others, but no Pokemon professor had ever bothered to categorize them, being more focused on evolution and the bonds between humans and Pokemon and other insignificant endeavors. If Sun's list was correct, it was a huge step forward for the world. Most of the old charts contradicted each other back and forth, and Sun's list was incomplete, but it looked consistent. She silently mouthed, wow, at everything on display. Sun looked very proud. Lusamine gathered herself. So, you designed all of this? She gestured to the new ideas, the concepts Sun proposed. Last night? Yes, I could probably do better if... Lusamine squeezed Sun close to her in a sign of affection, cutting him off. He made a sound close to a purr as she did so, making her laugh and feel her desire to control him like a pet arise at the same time. This is incredible, Sun. I didn't know you held such natural talent for this. She kissed him on the forehead and he giggled. Thank you, Mother, he said shyly, blushing. I don't know, I felt like I could do it. Sun, you're so smart. Lusamine was taken aback by the detail of the writing, too. Unlike Faber, who was dead set on doing things his way, Sun had left room for improvement and made discretions where he wasn't entirely happy with an idea. He had even considered to make his own system compatible with Faber's in some aspect. Thank you, Sun repeated, blushing deeper. I'd best take this away before Gladian sees it, Lusamine said, and moved to scoop up the plans. Sun placed his flat palm on top of them, preventing her from doing so. Lusamine was taken aback. Why shouldn't Gladian see it? The question was innocent, but clearly Sun wouldn't fall for a dumb answer. He wanted to share his work. It was only natural. Because it was his Pokemon that were chosen for the first experiment, and that left a bad taste in his mouth. Lusamine didn't want to lie to him. Sun looked horrified. Wait, you actually made this version of the system? He pointed at it with one of the old diagrams he'd scribbled over, the one with the proposed chimera of body parts, with the giant red X slashed through it. Type null. The internal system? We did, at Faber's request. And you made it out of my brother's Pokemon? Lusamine didn't falter. He volunteered. No, he didn't. Sun's call-out was astute. And if he did, he didn't know the risk. I mean, this... Sun gestured towards the old diagrams detailing how the RKS system plugged into the cortex of the brain and could cause blindness and seizures if faulty. Mother, tell me it's not true. Sun, it's fine. We learned from our mistakes. You cut up Gladian's Pokemon to build an experimental monster. Sun looked devastated. His usual smile wiped away, and his eyebrows raised incredulously, as if he didn't believe that she could be so cruel. Is that why Gladian is afraid of you? Sun, Lusamine scowled. Don't worry yourself with what has happened. I don't want to help if you're hurting Pokemon. I'll run away, far away. Sun shouted the words at her, and they struck like bullets. She realized she lost control somehow. She needed the reins back. Sun, she said gently, trying a different approach. Veba forced us to. He didn't care about Pokemon. You know I do. I love them with all I am. Luzmine lied. Sun wasn't convinced. She could tell. He had his hands in a position to rip apart the diagrams if so desired. That couldn't happen. Mother, what happened to the first one? Sun asked. This one. He indicated the picture of type null. Gladian took it with him when he left. It was his partner. We didn't recover it with him. Luzmine thought about how dangerous it was to have one of the null specimens out in the wild. There were 3. 2 were cloned from the original and were in stasis beneath the paradise in the labs. Oh, so it's free now, Sun said. There seemed to be relief in his voice. It must be in pain. Luzmine capitalized. Yes, and that's why I wanted to show you the plans. I thought you could improve them. Sun allowed her to hold him again, but still looked uncertain. Will you use this? It's not done yet, he mumbled. I'm not sure about this, Mother. He had a dead-set expression, a 1,000-yard stare. I don't want to help, he decided. That's okay, Sun. It was only a test of Sun's intelligence. Luzmine still wanted the plans, but wouldn't be able to use them if he took them. There was no way to memorize the sheer volume of writing. Can I keep she began, placing her hand on the plans beside his, but he quickly swiped every individual sheet of paper she hadn't covered. No, it's not done, and you... He pulled the paper below her hand hesitantly. It's not done. You can't use it. Sun was blabbering to himself. Luzmine was watching him, and her hold on him was different now. It wasn't loving. Her hand snaked around his neck, elbow resting on his back. He tried to lean away, but her grip was like a clamp. Sun, give them to me. The words were a breathed threat. No. Her sharp eyes became even sharper at his response. They seemed to light up at his challenge, a toxic green, a radioactive green. And yet, Sun's eyes were still the same. Neither wanted to relent. Sun, her nails pointed into his skin. Let me take the plan. She was drawing him closer. Mother, you can't use them. They're not ready yet. Sun still wouldn't give up. I won't give them to you. So finish them. Luzmine was hardly making noise, speaking directly into his ear. Finish them, Sun. Make it safe. Make it good. Her nails bit deeper. Sun twitched. Sun, you'll make your mother very happy. She hoped that his mental conditioning would kick in and overcome the concerns he had for type null, replacing it with his loyalty to her. She brushed her lips against him, feeling him quiver. He moaned, trying to stifle it but failing. He took a deep breath. I don't... Luzmine kissed him on the cheek, their bodies now pressed against each other. Sun, are you my perfect son, or not? Sun gave in. He kissed her in return, desperate to redeem himself to her. Yes, Mother, he said, backing away from her for a moment after putting all his passion into the kiss. Absolutely, I am. He met her lips again, He was pushing against her, and Lusamine was taken aback by the force with which he was doing so. She held his wrist to restrain him from laying her flat. Now was not the time to go far with this. Lily and Gladian were going to wake up and come downstairs soon. Sun wouldn't stop. He dropped all of his gathered designs into her lap, trying to touch her, even as she gripped his wrist tightly. "Please, Mother," he gasped, his face red. "Please, let me be your perfect son." Even as she held him back, he attempted to break free and get his hands on her. She put a setting, and she didn't know how to turn it off. "Son," Lusamine said, changing her stance so she was sitting with one of his wrists in her hand, while blocking his arm with her forearm, leaving her hand free to gather the schematics. "Son, giving me this is enough to tell me you're my—" No, I need to prove it," Sun said with zeal. "I need to—" Lusamine scooped up the last pieces of paper on the table and stuffed it alongside the others before knocking Sun back with a shove and reversing the situation. She'd have to satisfy him quickly. She locked her fingers with his and kissed him, at first just to calm him, then with the real emotion and gratitude towards him. Her perfect son. She flattened Sun out on the couch and didn't let him escape, holding him down. Lily and Gladian had always shrunk away, always tried to break free, but as Lusamine forced her tongue into his mouth, Sun only closed his eyes and moaned again, this time openly, in a state of bliss. Lusamine invaded his mouth, pressing into it and keeping Sun's tongue at bay. He wanted to return the affection, but Lusamine was irritated by the lack of compliance earlier and didn't allow him to gain the upper hand. She pinned him there until he was exhausted from the nearly violent nature of her kiss. "Thank you, Mother," he said as she sat up properly, leaving him lying across the other half of the couch. He was lost in happiness. "No, son, thank you," she corrected with a smile. She would have given the plans back to him to finish if they hadn't taken such difficulty to acquire. As she folded them over and held them tightly while Sun got over her assault, he was still in personal heaven, shaking with hasty breaths. Lusamine knew he was too far out to notice, so she allowed herself to scowl at him. He was difficult. He was being pediatric, she thought. He wouldn't give her everything she wanted so long as she dealt with his quirks. She quickly rifled through the papers and cursed the fact that she didn't have pockets to put them in. "Son, I'm just going to put these away and—" "But they're not done." "Son, relax. I just want to show these improvements to a few people," she lied. She didn't want to put it into practice, but she did want to study the ideas he had and see if they made sense or were all jargon. The thing she was most excited to see was a type chart. That could change everything if it was correct. Sun had sat back up, and while his concern had returned, his dedication was high, and he wouldn't protest further. Snuggling against her, "Thank you for giving me a chance, Mother," Sun spoke. Lusamine played with his hair absently before snapping back to reality. If Gladian saw the new plans, he'd throw a fit. "Okay, son, I'm going to go put these away now. I'll be right back." Lusamine moved before Sun could protest, taking the plans through her office and organizing a meeting with Faba to analyze the new ideas. When she returned, after spending a couple of minutes looking closer at the plans, Lily and Gladian were downstairs with Sun. Gladian standing awkwardly. Lily and Sun were sat on the couch as far apart as possible. They all glanced up at her as she arrived. Sun with adoration, Gladian with apathy, and Lily with apprehension. Lusamine absorbed all the looks and the meanings and the emotion. It made her feel stronger. Hatred, fear, and love were the most powerful of all emotions in that order. So to have them all pointed at her at once was an experience. She sat between Sun and Lily, Sun scooting over to be close to her. "Good morning, you two," she greeted Lily and Gladian. Gladian grunted, and Lily said, "Nothing." "Oh, come on now," Lucy Mead admonished for the lack of gusto. Sun was already against her, clutching her arm in a needy fashion. "Morning, Mother," Lily mumbled, resting her chin on her hand, her elbow on the armrest of the couch. "There you go, Lily. That wasn't too difficult, was it?" "No, Mother." "How about you, Gladian?" "Gladian?" Lucimene's voice was challenging. "Good morning, Mother," Gladian replied, properly this time. "Gladian, do you remember the RKS system?" Lucimene asked. She changed her mind. Fuck Gladian. Why not tell him about the upcoming version 2, pinned by his friend-turned-brother? Why not rip into him, stick fingers into his heart, and rip it out viciously, telling him exactly what Sun was doing for her? He was hideous enough to deserve it. Disobedience deserved punishment. "Yeah, I do." He was confrontational. "Good. Sun here," she said, taking Sun's shoulder and smiling down at him lovingly, "has helped me to improve the system." She scrutinized Gladian's face. He tried to hide his shock and anger. He failed. "Haven't you, Sun?" "But I thought we weren't telling Gladian," Sun questioned. The sequence of the words was the most beautifully crafted sentence that Lucimene could have hoped from Sun. The use of "we," implying that Lucimene were closer than Gladian and Lucimene could ever be, and the simple "weren't telling" implication, as Lucimene knew. The most important of all weapons in manipulating and influencing people. Sun was a gift. "Oh, well, I've decided we can tell him now." Lucimene hid a smile behind her hand delicately, snickering silently. How Gladian must be fuming. "Sun's made it wonderful. Would you care to know how?" "No," Gladian said, shaking. "If you keep your mind closed forever, Gladian, you'll never learn anything," Lucimene taunted, as Sun, almost animalistic, rubbed against her, making the same purring noise. Lucimene saw Lily twitch with disgust at Sun's action, and her smirk only grew stronger. "Oh, you two, you may never be useful to me as Sun is." "Then maybe you should thank us," Gladian spat, "for bringing him to—" "Gladian, why don't we discuss this later?" Lucimene said warningly. Sun hadn't noticed, still trying to find the most comfortable nook of her body to nestle and squeeze up against. "Sun," she cooed, and wrapped her arm around him tighter, making him giggle childishly. "Fuck this," Gladian said, and went to leave. Escape the mansion. "Gladian, language," Lucimene told him off. "And you can stay here." Gladian stopped, fuming. His fist was clenched and his brow creased. "What for?" "I think we should spend some time together as a family," Lucimene replied simply, Sun nodding along while continuing to excitedly search for the right spot to be in. "Don't you, Sun?" "Yes, Mother," Sun fawned. He hadn't even heard what she said. "And how about you, Lily?" Lucimene asked. She wanted to see if Lily was actually willing to change. Certainly, Mother," Lily replied. She didn't seem too happy about it, but replying in the affirmative alone told Lucimene that Lily was making an effort, at least. That was a first step. 3-1, Gladian. Gladian's face was despair incarnate. All of the struggle was grinded out of him. He just accepted his fate and went to sit beside Lily. The whole family sat gathered on the couch now, too close and too far. Lucimene beckoned her biological children, making them shift closer. She put her arms around all of them and hugged them, kissing each of them on the forehead in turn. "Oh, you're all so adorable," she complimented them, giddy with sudden happiness. "Thank you, Mother," Sun said. Lucy tightened her grasp on him in particular. She wanted to ravage him. She had. She would. And the feeling, the fear, confusion, hatred, repulsion, anger, sadness, radiating from Lily and Gladian, emotion fed her. She loved the ease with which she could force the reactions out of her children. Sun was a weapon, all she ever wanted and needed, and more still. The thought of fucking all three of them, then and there, slid into her mind, and she chuckled darkly. She'd get around to it eventually, but perhaps now was not the time. Now was the time to really dive a point into them, tear through their hearts, and crush them. Sun, how are you finding your brother and sister? Sun was playing with her hair curiously. He hadn't heard the question. Lusamine huffed with amusement. She poked Sun's shoulder until he came back to the present, blushing. Lusamine repeated herself, much to Gladian's and Lily's chagrin. He began. I like them. I like Lily. Lusamine laughed, and Gladian grunted irritably. He had been very harsh towards Sun, but that wasn't really his fault, was it? Sun had changed. Sun had transformed from Sun into something else entirely. A monster, a creature, a pet. Gladian brushed off the slight without a second thought. Sun would speak his mind. He knew that much. And Gladian, Lily, what do you think of dear Sun? Lusamine showed them a feral grin as Sun resumed childishly fiddling with her hair, which was partially draped over him with the closeness he had to her. Gladian responded. He refused to play party to this nonsensical game Lusamine was weaving. I like Sun, Lily replied simply. The best she could do was hope to neither offend nor enthuse her mother, nor Sun. The plan Lusamine had for her children was in full effect. Using Sun, she could manipulate them to no end, controlled them in new and fascinating ways. Attachment, love, that was a weakness she had never displayed. Until Sun. Until now. She had to be careful not to let it consume sensibilities. Being in command was important. She wanted Gladian's resistance broken, his walls brought down, and his resilience drained. She wanted Gladian to become less than human, only fitting for his lack of love for her, the perfect human. Lily would be tested differently. With Sun's changes, Lily would be frustrated and upset, and how those emotions manifested would be interesting to see the aftermath of. Maybe she'd break and become a perfect daughter. It was a blind hope, an unlikely one, but it was possible, to be certain. Sun's test was his mental fortitude. She had already seen his potential. If the RKAS system functioned in superior fashion to Phaeba's design, then Sun's next project would be alongside her in the most important of all. Ultraspace. The creature she had seen through the portal, which hadn't been forgotten in the haze of Sun's newfound perfection. Working with Sun to find it again, and create the perfect world with him by her side, would be the endgame of this plan. But there was still so much to do yet. She spent the morning with her children, idly indulging in laziness, but by afternoon she had her duties to attend to. First was talking to Phaeba about the new plans. She wasn't excited to see him by any means. However, she looked forward to see his reaction at seeing his precious plans defiled. She had torn off the type matchup chart and hidden it in a drawer in her new desk. Her old desk, with her graffiti buffed by her own hand, was now in Sun's room, and she imagined that there was where he'd worked on the ideas. She'd given them notes to glance over, and while she wasn't entirely lost, Sun's writing was abstract enough to confuse her in places. Whether the scrawling was genius or idiocy remained to be seen. Feva's arrival marked the first time he'd entered the mansion since Sun's operation. He came in with his head held high, expecting Lusamine to ask for help with some new project, but quickly realized that was not the case upon seeing the old ideas for type null scribbled over. What have you done to my— Listen to me, Lusamine interrupted, her voice demanding he do so. I was informed Sun was knowledgeable in the field of Pokemon possible. I put him to the test. Look at this. She let Feba cross over to her side of the desk and read the intended first page of designs. Feba was muttering the words under his breath. Old Arceus. Too cumbersome, too dangerous, too difficult for wear, too painful on installation, too physically restraining, too... Feba sounded less and less happy with every syllable. Lusamine enjoyed the sound. New proposed design work, memories manually switched in combat, emphasis on mobility, comfort of ease of use, system compatible with... Feba sounded angry. Good. He's right, isn't he? Lusamine said, triumphant. I may well have found someone to take your place, Feba. No, he's all wrong. All wrong. I mean, look at the creature with the power was proposed, and with no restraints. The child may... Feba slurred as he spoke, Lusamine shooting him a look of disgust. Think that Pokemon are all friendly and well and good, but not my type full. They are designed to kill. They're type null after your failures, Lusamine reminded. Regardless, he has no idea what he's dealing with. Well, he may be... Feba continued reading. How does he even know these things? Feba glared at Lusamine. Are you setting me up? No, Feba. This was all Sun. Lusamine rested her chins on her hand placidly, but inside was ecstatic at Feba's defeat. Isn't he smart? He didn't write this, Feba dismissed. And if he did, his ideas are far too short-sighted. No protocols in place to kill the specimen should they try to become dangerous. Not a single thought given how to control them. He's a trainer, Lusamine reminded Feba. He was. Nonetheless, his ideas are archaic. In what sense? Well, are you jealous? Well, I would be jealous of a brain-dead, disgusting pet of yours. In other circumstances, Lusamine would have knocked Feba out. But she had the upper hand already. Oh my, it seemed that you are. Feba was leafing through the sheets angrily, trying to find a fault. Cyber energy apparatus type. He listed off random words he was reading, as if it was some sort of bizarre shopping list. Lusamine tapped a finger on her desk in an irregular rhythm, knowing the sound would wind Feba up further. How does he know? He is quite precious. Oh, do shut up. My ideas are far superior. Don't lie. Feba hissed, sucking in air through his teeth. Lusamine chuckled. She stood, towering over Feba all of a sudden. I say, we fetch Sun and ask him about his ideas. Tell him just how smart he is. Then maybe we can all work together on bringing back type full project that you got scrubbed. I don't work with children, Feba said irritably. You do now. So that was the end of chapter 17. I hope you guys enjoyed listening, and I hope that your week goes well. And I will see you guys next week with another chapter.